Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. For over a century, the Imperial German submarine UB-65 has been documented not for its combat record, but for its curse. The legend describes a doomed vessel, stalked by the ghost of a dead officer, and ultimately destroyed by the mysterious forces that haunted it. The actual Imperial German Navy metadata tells a highly documented industrial story. Ordered in May 1916 at a cost of 3.2 million poppy mark, this vessel was built for a specific, measurable purpose. UB-65 was a type UB-3. This was an experimental, mass-produced piece of military hardware rushed into service to choke off Allied shipping, lacking any supernatural properties. Unraveling the vessel's reputation requires tracing three distinct threads: the record of its physical construction, the mental state of its crew, and a trail of post-war documentation. The physical remains of the sub were finally discovered in 2004. The archaeological evidence resting on the seafloor contradicts decades of official Navy records regarding its final moments. By decoupling the paranormal folklore from the physical machine, we can examine the actual, documented tragedies that took the lives of its crew. In 1916, the Vulcan-Verka shipyard faced intense pressure to rapidly launch new U-boats. The chaotic environment of massive wartime mobilization proved deadly. During early construction, a crane chain holding a massive steel girder snapped, crashing into the dry dock below, crushing 2 workers. Shortly after, the submarine claimed 3 more lives before it even touched the water. 3 engineers conducting routine engine tests were quickly overcome and asphyxiated inside the hull. The cause of death was highly specific: noxious diesel fumes leaking from early, volatile dry cell battery tests. Surviving crew members became highly reluctant to sail on the vessel. They viewed these 5 sudden deaths as an omen of a doomed ship. These fatalities were the statistical outcome of rushing experimental heavy industry and untested propulsion systems into the hands of a wartime workforce. The first sea trials validated the crew's anxieties. During a sudden storm, a massive wave swept a sailor overboard to his death. This animated cross-section of a Type UB-3 hull shows the mechanical failure that occurred during the boat's first test dive. A fracture opened in a primary ballast tank, allowing highly pressurized seawater to breach the interior. The incoming seawater immediately flooded the dry cell battery compartment located below the main deck. When salt water mixes with battery acid, it triggers a severe chemical reaction. Toxic chlorine and carbon monoxide gases rapidly filled the enclosed engine room, destroying the breathable air supply. Unable to surface due to the mechanical damage, the crew was trapped on the seafloor for 12 hours, slowly suffocating in the dark before they finally managed to restore buoyancy and reach the surface. Looking at this photograph of a U-boat crew, the physical reality of their working conditions becomes clear. Dozens of men shared a claustrophobic steel tube, where a single cracked seal meant an agonizing death. The early history of UB-65 highlights the lethal volatility of early diesel-electric propulsion. The terror experienced by the sailors was rooted in mechanical failure. Once active, UB-65 compiled a highly effective combat record under the command of Martin Shelley. The crew successfully hunted and sank 6 merchant vessels, along with the British warship HMS Arbutus. The specific ghost story attached to the submarine stems from another mechanical failure. A torpedo exploded prematurely inside the vessel, killing the second officer, Lieutenant Richter. Following Richter's death, crew members began reporting paranormal sightings. A lookout in the conning tower claimed to see Richter's ghost standing on the deck below, despite all exterior hatches being battened down. The folklore escalated rapidly. Reports circulated that a torpedo man, driven completely insane by repeated hauntings in the weapons bay, threw himself overboard and drowned. According to the legend, the Imperial Navy grew so desperate to quell the panic that they launched an official investigation and brought a Lutheran pastor aboard to perform an exorcism on the hull. These stories conflict entirely with the historical combat record. A crew supposedly paralyzed by demonic terror and mutinous fear could not execute 6 precise, technically demanding war patrols in hostile waters. When modern researchers George Behe and Michael Goss audited the official German naval logs for UB-65, they found zero mentions of ghosts, suicides, or Lutheran exorcisms. The entire haunted narrative was invented by Hector Charles Bywater, a post-war British journalist who realized that ghost stories sold more papers than engineering reports. To legitimize his articles, Bywater simply fabricated his sources. He frequently cited a post-war pamphlet written by a Dr. Hecht, a document and a doctor that did not exist. This single point of journalistic fabrication spawned a century of secondary citations. The lie propagated through pulpy mid-century magazines, paranormal books, and eventually modern internet folklore. Submariners faced horrific, invisible deaths from faulty valves and chemical leaks. Post-war society eagerly embraced Bywater's ghost story because a supernatural curse is far easier to process than the bleak, suffocating reality of early submarine warfare. The official German Admiralty record lists UB-65 as destroyed on July 10, 1918. Their conclusion was that the vessel was lost to the premature explosion of its own torpedo. The German records confidently plotted this final disaster geographically, placing the wreck somewhere south of the Irish coast. The American naval logs tell a different story. Captain Paul F. Foster, commanding the U.S. submarine L-2, recorded an encounter. Foster reported spotting the disabled UB-65 listing heavily on the surface. Before the Americans could fire, the German submarine vanished in a massive explosion. The American account included a theatrical detail that would later feed Bywater's myth: the sighting of a ghostly figure in an officer's overcoat standing motionless on the bow just before the blast. The discrepancy between the German assumption of a torpedo failure and the bizarre American eyewitness account created a historical blind spot. Without physical evidence, the legend remained unchallenged for 86 years. In 2004, a Channel 4 expedition led by nautical archaeologist Innes McCartney and U-boat historian Dr. Axel Neasley finally located the wreck. A bathymetric map shows the wreckage off Padstow, Cornwall, refuting German logs placing the loss near Ireland. Researchers identified the vessel by matching design features and recovering identification numbers stamped into the propeller. Inspection revealed open aft hatches, implying a specific, desperate escape attempt. Damage expert David Manley analyzed the wreck and found no external weapon damage. The open hatches suggest that the sub suffered internal system failures, likely from the shock of an indirect depth charge attack, forcing the crew into a desperate, failed attempt to escape before sinking. UB-65 was a flawed machine operated in hellish conditions. The physical remains on the seafloor provide a final, concrete answer, silencing the ghost story invented to fill the void of its loss.